So we're now talking about how all of this world is in consciousness. Let me poke this thing up quickly here. There. Krishna has said that good and bad and joy and sorrow and virtue and vice and all these proceed from me. Very different than the Western paradigm, where God is good. Bad stuff comes from the devil. In Vedanta, in yoga, all of it is in God. What does that mean? It's all in consciousness. Again, the easiest way to understand this is to go to the dream. You are the God of your dream. So if you have a pleasant dream, wonderful things are happening. You have to get particular. But that dream is in you, in your mind. But if the next night you have a nightmare, it too is in your mind. So everything that happens in the world of manifestation is in infinite consciousness. Now, what we need to understand here is that many of us have a little God who's neurotic and anthropomorphic. We don't realize it. You may be able to talk about, well, I believe God is this and I believe God is that, etc. But the way in which we pray reveals our theology. So do you do a puja or a prayer where you go, oh, Hanuman, please heal Aunt Priya? What does that tell you about what you think about God? I'm God. Deepa, beg. I love it when you beg. Eli, you don't get your prayers answered. You didn't beg today. Is your God like that? Do you have that kind of a neurotic God? Or a capricious God? Fang, you just didn't part your hair right today. I'm going to give you trouble. Trevor, I like you today. You're looking good. Blessings. Is that your God? Had a phone call several weeks ago. Wonderful, very, very devout young woman. And her husband was testing out a motorcycle and it tipped over and fell on his leg and broke his leg. And she said, oh, is this bad karma? Are we being punished for such and such and so and so? Who's had ideas like that? Karma doesn't punish us. That's superstition. That's like you go out without an umbrella and you get caught in the rain and you think the thunder god is punishing you. Why did you get wet if you go out in the rain? You didn't bring an umbrella. All karma means is action and its consequential reaction. The energy we put out determines the energy that comes back. So why did this fellow break his leg? It's very simple. He dropped a motorcycle on it. That's it. I used to work with guys with AIDS back in the 80s. Oh, Jim, I mean, being punished for being gay. I can't tell you how many times I dealt with that. No, you have AIDS because you had unsafe sex. Or another fellow would say, I don't know why I got AIDS. I was in love with so and so. I'm sorry. Bugs don't care whether you're in love or not. We get the inevitable results of our actions. Now, most of it's done in ignorance. Most of it's done in ignorance. So there's no devil out there afflicting us with tribulation. There's no capricious God out there. One of the oldest images for God in Hinduism is Surya. You can tell me what Surya means. So, yes. I love it. It's one of my favorites because the sun just shines. And the grace of God, the love of God, the wisdom of God, the mercy of God is like the sunlight. It just is. But you and I can smoke crack, stay inside, and put black plastic all over the windows. Is the sun doing anything to us? Is it? Or more likely, you and I go outside with a hoodie over my head in the dark, or a paper bag over my head. There's no sun. There's no sun. What's is the sun changed at all? No. So what is the paper bag over my head or the hoodie that I pull down? Ahankara. Egoism in its various forms. And what's the root of most of it? Self-centered fear. Self-centered fear is the chief activator. All my doshas, my defects of character, my kleshas. Personality maladjustments. So the vast majority of the suffering that goes on in the world is not God's doing. It's in God, it's in consciousness. But it's the thoughts and actions of you and me. Any thoughts on this? How do I bring about peace on earth? How do I bring about justice? My old activist days, we used today, think globally, but act locally. The meditational song came to me. I don't know, it's an old-timey song. Let there be peace on earth. Maybe you know that song? No. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, a peace that was meant to be. God God as our Father or our Mother. Brothers and sisters, all are we. Let's walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be my solemn vow. To take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. If you don't like the war in Afghanistan or the starvation of people around the world, start by not being a jerk to your boyfriend or girlfriend or husband and wife. Start by not bad-mouthing people at work that you don't approve of or don't like. Karma. Start sending out this energy. Any thoughts on this? The person who says, I want world peace, I want to end war, and screams and yells at your partner is a hypocrite. Any thoughts on that one? Yeah. Well, why do we not, aren't we conscious of people starving in this part of the world or conflicts in that part of the world? When was the last time you walked by an alcoholic lying in a doorway and did nothing? At least acknowledge someone's humanity. This is not easy. This is not easy. This was the whole teaching behind Gandhi's Satyagraha. Yes, you resist injustice. Yes, you resist evil, but you always do it non-violent. Live your life. It's a way in which we can change that. Practice is called ahimsa in yoga. Any thoughts or comments out there in Zoom land? All right, next, what verse are we on? The 10th?
7.
7th verse. All right.
Etam vibhutim yogam cha mamayo veti tattvataha so vikampena yogena yujyate natra samshayah. He who, in truth, knows these meaningful manifestations of my being, or the macrocosm, and this yoga power of mine, which is the microcosm, becomes established in tremorless yoga. There is no doubt about it.
So this idea of macrocosm, microcosm, we get a lot of that. We have a wonderful breakdown of it in the Mandukya Upanishad. You have a physical body. God has a physical body. It's not like the statue of Lord Shiva or Krishna playing his flute. It's the whole phenomenal universe. You have a subtle body, your thoughts and feelings. God has a subtle body, the total mind. Sum total of all the thoughts and feelings that can be thought, have been thought, will be thought. You have a causal body, karana sharira, your vasana bundle, the impressions formed from past actions, from prior lifetimes, in this lifetime, that impel us into action. We call the macrocosmic causal body Ishvara. Ishvara is usually translated as the Lord, or God. Comes from the root ichati, which means to wish or to will or to intend. Ishvara, another name for Ishvara, is the total vasana. The cause of all causes. What was it that set the Big Bang into motion? What is it right here now? It's causing the whole universe to come into being. Listen carefully. At the core of your being is a witnessing consciousness that is without form, without qualities, without any color, without any shape. It's beginningless, changeless, and endless. Macrocosmically, Krishna is that consciousness in which the whole universe exists like a dream. Krishna here is the same as Brahman. Some of you may know those 4 Mahavakyas, the great utterances from the Upanishads. The first one, Prajnanam Brahma. Brahman is consciousness. It's knowing. It's awareing. Now, that witnessing consciousness in you and that ground of being of the whole universe, they're the same thing. I am Atma, Brahma. This self is. Now, there's all sorts of ramifications of this teaching. How does the universe come into being? The scriptures say by means of sankalpa. Sankalpa is an almost untranslatable word. Wish, will, intention, thought. Sankalpa is the process whereby wish, will, intention, thought grossifies and, as it were, manifests. You and me as individuals, microcosm, to a limited degree, have much more freedom. We think we do. We, at the individual level, reenact that creative process that the infinite has. Meaning, my life, my experiences are to a tremendous degree the result of my individual sankalpa. Ishvara may be busy spinning galaxies and making black holes. What are you doing in your little corner of the universe, are you using the creative power of your mind? Nobody loves me. I'm alone. My life is so terrible. Be afraid. Oh, it's a scary world. If that's the deeply rooted belief system, God goes, yes. But if, on the other hand, as the result of direct experience in your meditation, you know it's all God, it's all going to work out. It's a cosmos, not a chaos. I tell people I live in a beneficent universe that conspires for my well-being, if I let it. Meaning, Jim, get out of the way. There's nothing to fear, because God's in charge. And then, if an intention arises in your bosom, I want to accomplish this particular project at work, you trust. Any sankalpa that is consistently maintained, that's not conflicted or contradicted, tends towards manifestation. If, on the other hand, I'm not consistent, or I doubt, and it's conflicted, we get the hodgepodge life that so many of us lead. I'm begun a study of Yoga Sutra, which is an incredible text. It's not normally studied in the Vedanta tradition. It's from a completely different tradition. And they talk about the discipline of being able to have a single pointed mind. So, for example, Trevor, you're taking a math class, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's your intention. I'm taking a math class. I assume you want to do well in it. And you want to learn. So if thoughts of doubt, I can't do this, I'm stupid, arise, you go, no, I will not let that negative sankalpa get in my way. I'm going to do well, and I'm going to put in the work. And that does mean you have to put in the action. Have confidence. You all know our friend Puneet. He's one of the fellows who chants on Thursdays. He used to work for this outfit called the Learning Guild. And what they were doing is teaching computer programming to marginalized communities. Kids who would come, and they would come from populations where nobody was a computer programmer. We worked at McDonald's. And they had to struggle with what they called over the Learning Guild imposter syndrome. Who can tell me what imposter syndrome is?
When you think you're not deserving of the position or role you're in, or you feel like you're going to be called out at any time for your skills, which you're that.
Or I'm faking it. I'm an imposter. I can't really do this. Do you have anything to add? We have a mental health professional with us.
I was going to make a joke, but I'm not really sure how to answer that. I think I
That is very funny. But what did Puneet work on these kids with? No, look at the facts. You did the work. You can do the programming. What does this do? It busts through that old sankalpa, that negative sanskara impression. You see. So this is some of the work we deal also with our relationship with the mind. I am not the mind. I'm ever the knower of the mind. I'm the witness of it. But the implication behind this verse is we can also deal with the content of our minds. So, if you're a yogi and you really want samadhi, really want deep peace and freedom, things you need to give up that you may not have thought about. Do you spend time with co-workers, trashing management where you work? Do you get involved in political discussions, criticizing people whose beliefs are different than yours? Or do you lie awake in bed at night worrying about the future? You can change these habits. So these sanskaras that are created by past sanskalpas, by vrittis, by thoughts, they literally form grooves in the brain, convolutions in the brain. And the mind is ruled by the law of inertia. The law of inertia is that a body at rest or in motion in a vacuum will continue to stay at rest or in motion until energy is applied to change it. The asteroid's just going to keep moving through space until something hits it. So, some of our family of origin, deeply rooted thought patterns. I was talking with someone about, there was trauma from childhood. You need to acknowledge it. You need to notice it. Yeah, these responses I have are because of my trauma. Now, what are you going to do about it? See, at some point, we have to begin to change the flow of those thought patterns. It's safe. Be okay. I was talking with a kid this afternoon. He's coming back from pretty horrific drug relapse, crystal meth. He's now 33 days clean. It's all a mess. Oh, I don't know what's going to happen with my career and my relationship, and I don't know whether I should move back in with my partner. And he was just a mess. I said to him, do you have food in the refrigerator? Yeah. Have you eaten today? Yeah. All your body parts working? Yeah. Do you have a place to live? Yeah. Is the rent paid? Yeah. You are fine. God's done his job. You've been taken care of today. Be at peace. One day at a time. Now, I do love the Sufi saying, trust God, but tether your camel. That doesn't mean we don't plan. But we don't worry. Because the end result of worry is we get paralyzed from it. Okay, enough on that. So the implication, microcosm, macrocosm, core of your being, the self in you, and the ground of being of the whole universe, they are the same. The whole universe, everything in it is in infinite consciousness. And you and I have a limited freedom. A lot more control, dominion over our lives than we think. But the content of our habituated thought life certainly creates how we perceive. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
From verse 8. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. I am the source of all. From me everything evolves. Understanding thus, the wise endowed with loving consciousness worship me.
Yes. So everything that is in consciousness. Krishna says, I'm the source of all. Now, we have several images to talk about this. One of the most famous is the pratibimba. You can tell me what pratibimba is?
Reflection.
For reflection, specifically in a mirror. Yeah. So, the mirror is sthita. It just stands. It is. Beautiful, beautiful woman like Deepa looks into it. Mirror just is. An ugly old man like me looks into it. Mirror just is. So the reflection of the beautiful woman, wrinkly old man, are nothing but the mirror appearing as those different images. But the mirror really does not undergo a change. As old and as wrinkly as I am, I've yet to crack a mirror. So also, all the things that happen to the world never touch consciousness. So what? That means it never really touches you. Now, there's a practice that's implied here. So many of you have practiced this drishya vivek, this subject-object discrimination in your meditation. I am not the body, I am not the prana, I am not the mind, I am not the thoughts. I am the consciousness, the awareness, the being in which they all occur. Now, take this out into your daily life And when something positive or negative happens, see if you can remember to have this introversion of the attentive faculty. And notice, did this touch me? Or am I still that empty witnessing consciousness? This is Viveka. And then we have to be willing to drop ego's need to protect, secure, or defend itself. You must prove to yourself in your own mind, does anything that happened ever really touch me? Now, none of us are kids. We've all had a few years on this planet. Are not you still you? You bring your attention right into the now. All that's happened in the past, be it positive or negative, it's much like a dream, actually a memory. Are you not still unattached, untouched by it? Krishna will use the phrase asparsha yoga. Asparsha means not touched. Prichati is to touch. Asparsha is untouched. Yoga means union. Swamiji would translate this as the touch of the untouched. Because of you, the body moves, the emotions feel, the intellect thinks. None of it touches. Some of you may know that very famous hymn, Asangoham, 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 Puna Puna, Satchidananda Rupoham, Aham Devaham Bhavyaya. Unattached, unattached, unattached am I again and again. I am of the nature of Sat, pure existence. Chit, pure awareness. Ananda. For now, let's translate that as no sorrow touches me. I am that I am. Now, what about this world? It appears like pratibimba, the images in the mirror. But what is it materially made? My favorite mantra from Chandogya. Sarvam kalvidam brahma. Sarvamidam, all this, kalu, verily is Brahma. It's all God. It's all Leela, the play of consciousness. I don't need to be afraid. I don't need to control or dominate. It's all just consciousness appearing as this marvelous world in native form. What do we know about this world? One of the words for it is Jagat, the creation. It goes junka, 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 junka. It's always moving, changing, cosmic kaleidoscope. You are the person looking at it. All the names and forms contained within consciousness. Only my human judgments. Same fellow I was talking with earlier today. He's got a lot of fear of death. He's experienced a lot of really tragic death. It's very funny because he's coming back from a relapse where he could have died from crystal meth. Anyway, I said to him, dying is completely safe. Dying is not a tragedy. Getting there is tragic. Suffering is tragic. But think. If all the scriptures and all the religions are wrong, and when you're dead, you're dead. There's nothing. I ain't gonna hurt. Maybe the scriptures are right. Self and me is changeless. That's okay. Being dead doesn't hurt. You're not going to be underground. You're gone. Anybody here actually been at a deathbed when the person actually dies and leaves the body? Who's done that? It's so clear. At one moment, something alive is there. And then that piece of clay lying on the bed. Well, that's not auntie or grandma or brother. Did you have that experience?
Yeah.
Whatever it is that they were, it's gone. It's a mystery, where'd you go? But it's not what's left. There's nothing to fear about that. We have to make peace with our own mortality so that we don't live in fear. Of course, the way yoga suggests that we do that is begin to see that you are not the body, you're the knower. So we look at life from this angle, it's all illusion, it's all a reflection, it's all like a mirage, it's all a superimposition. I am unattached, never touched by it. We also want to look at it from this angle. It's all God. It's all the play of consciousness. The waves are nothing but the ocean. Crashing waves don't hurt the ocean. always safe. Now, we talked earlier tonight about the habits of the mind. The bija vasana, the root attachment is dehovasana. Attachment, I think I'm my body. That's the root one. All the rest of ego structure comes from that. The import of this verse, all of this comes from me, Krishna. Remember when Krishna talks about himself, when he says me or I, he means the self in you. Not some Krishna out there. All of this exists in consciousness. The substratum of consciousness is kutusta. Still. One way to translate it is kuta is like an anvil, all the pieces of iron change on it, but the anvil is not moved. Some people translate kuta as a mountain. Mountain is still. All the weather happens, but the mountain just stands. Any thoughts on this? Next verse.
Machitta madadat prana bodhayanta parasparam kathayantascha mam nityam dushyanti cha ramanti cha. With their minds wholly resting in me, with their senses absorbed in me, enlightening one another, and ever speaking of me, they are satisfied and delighted.
Yes, yes. So, this is an echo of one of my favorite verses from the second chapter. In verse 54 in the second chapter, Krishna says, Arjuna says, dude, how does the person of knowledge sit? How do they stand? How do they walk? How do they talk? How can I know one when I find one? And Krishna starts what's called the Sthita Pragya Purusha section, the marks of the person of steady wisdom, steady knowledge. As with any list of things that we find in scripture, the totality of the teaching is usually in the first. Then they break it down. So what Krishna says, when a person casts off all the desires of the mind and is satisfied in the self, by the self. Then they are said to be a person of steady wisdom. Or in Viveka Chudamani, after our section on the qualifications of a fit student, it's a little short section on the qualifications of a fit teacher. And Shankara says that person who's Shrotriya, well versed in the scriptures, meaning they have a means of knowledge which they wield. Then he says, who's a full knower of the Supreme, who has retired into the Now, in the course of my wanderings, now for decades, I've met many teachers, many swamis, and many of them are very knowledgeable and good people. But when I was with Swamiji, I learned to tune to him. It was this vast emptiness. Just swallow our minds. And then other Mahatmas. Oh, this is the real McCoy. Doesn't mean we can't learn from the other teachers. That's right. So these rare souls who have retired into the self, who have retired into Krishna, needing their minds no longer extrovert into the senses, sense objects with need, craving. There are great souls who are like that. And luckily, some of them, for our great punya merit, share this knowledge with us. Any thoughts on this? All right, next one.
Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. To the ever steadfast, worshipping me with love, I give the buddhi yoga by which they come to me.
I give vibhuti yoga.
The buddhi, not vibhuti, buddhi.
Buddhi, oh, with intellect, okay. Vibhuti yoga is the chapter title, so my mind went there. Read it again because I'm slow.
Sure. To the ever steadfast, worshipping me with love, I give the buddhi yoga by which they come to me.
Yes. So we've taken this term yoga, which earlier had very specific understanding of those who were involved with asana and acquiring siddhis and stuff like that. One of the things that Gita does is he keeps redefining yoga. So buddhi yoga is the yoga of understanding, the yoga of wisdom. This does not mean I've read all the books. You've read all the books, then we call you a pundit. It's like saying professor. Buddhi yoga is when the subtle intellect has that aha. Pratya vijnana, recognition. Listen very, very carefully. Many people do not understand what enlightenment is, what self-realization is. First, we're dealing with the only real knowledge, which is the self-evidence of the self. Self is swayambhu, self-evident. Swayam jyoti, self-luminous. So if I ask the question, how do you know you were you? First of all, who sees the phone? I do. That's yourself. You don't get a new self. It's the only self you're going to have. My problem is I've superimposed on that direct experience all sorts of nonsense. So we know the world through the triple factor, the triple T. Knower, knowing, and known. I, through seeing, know the glass object. I, through touch, know the breeze from the fan. I, through hearing, know the sound of the traffic. Go through all the five senses. I, through manas, mind, know feelings, judgments. I, through buddhi, know thought. How do you know you? Don't see, hear, taste, touch, smell, emote, or think yourself. Yet you are you. This is the perfect knowledge. It's the knowledge that's beyond all those means of knowledge. Self knows itself. The great cosmic joke is everybody already has that. When did you ever not be you? Oh, Jim, on Tuesday last week, I wasn't. Nobody has that experience. You can be a Shunyavadan, scoliest of the void. I gave a workshop once up in Humboldt County. Is there anybody here who doesn't exist? Hand goes up. Sure you don't exist? Yes, I'm very sure I don't exist. Have you experienced that? Yes, I've experienced it. And the question is, to whom did that experience occur? Something disappeared, no doubt. We would call that ahankara, the ego, that disappeared. But you, ground of being, did not disappear. Let me show you the proof of this. Did I change the sheets on the bed this morning? Did I?
I don't know.
How come you don't know it?
You didn't tell us.
You weren't there. You didn't see it. You cannot know something unless you experience it. So this young man, yes, I've experienced that I don't exist. Something had to be there to experience the presence and then the absence of the personal sense of self. No doubt. Zen, they call that satori. We call it samadhi. But you, now, in the subtle intellect, if you have the aha Oh, I get it. There's nobody there. This is the recognition in a subtle intellect with the attentive faculty turned inward. In the space between your thoughts. Perhaps that moment between the inhale and the exhale, or between the exhale and the inhale. Who sees the presence and the absence of thought? Who are you? So there's nothing there. And then the buddhi goes, oh, that, oh, where you recognize. That's the awakening of the buddhi. Now, there are glimpses, and then there's getting established. They're not the same. Keep giving you the glimpse over and over and over again until finally mind is convinced. All the veiling power of ignorance is removed. Both bondage and liberation occur to the mind, technically the subtle intellect. Self is ever free. Your self doesn't get enlightened. Your self is already the lighted being. My stupid mind. What is my bondage? It's nothing more than the deeply rooted conviction I'm a body because of ignorance. What is moksha? What is liberation? It's nothing more than the deeply rooted conviction based on direct experience. Not that I'm an enlightened person. I'm Brahman. I'm Krishna. Shivoham. I'm Shiva. Aham Brahmasmi. No personal sense of self is real. That occurs to the subtle intellect. Buddhi. Now, this worship of the self. One of the things self-realization gives us is I finally know where happiness is, where joy is, where satisfaction is. It's the mind freed from its jonesing. Whoa, I want. Drop the rock, let it go. The mind can come home. This is the highest form of prema. Or as St. Augustine says, thou hast made us for thyself, O Lord, and our heart is restless until it rests in thee. So those who know their essential nature is the same as Krishna, and that this world is Leela, Pratibimba, reflection. It's all Maya Shakti, play of mind. Sarvam Kalvidam Brahma. It's all Brahman. All God. Then that person's mind doesn't fixate attachment. It can rest in some. All right, I think this is a good place to stop tonight. Any thoughts or questions before we end? What number will we start next week?
11.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Sri Guru Pyo Namaha Hari Om. Now, Eli and Stephanie, you folks live in the city, correct?